And welcome to tonight's Sunday Night SitDown. We're very excited to have a one-on-one sit down with someone I've known for a long time, who I'm extremely, proud of his growth and development as someone in the political field. I've been able to know him for over a decade now. It's kind of crazy to say that, but time flies, particularly in the business of politics. But tonight's Sunday Night Sit Down will be with the one and only Austin Davis, state representative from the Mon Valley, representing McKeesport and other municipalities in the greater McKeesport area. But he's also the Democratic nominee for Lieutenant Governor of Pennsylvania, on the running mate of Josh Shapiro, the Attorney General, who's the Democratic nominee for governor. And if Mr. Davis and Mr. Shapiro are successful in November, Austin Davis will become the first African-American lieutenant governor in Pennsylvania's long history. So we're very excited to bring him on to the Sunday Night Sit Down tonight. Welcome, State Representative Office Austin Davis, to the Sunday Night Sit Down.
Thank you so much for having me here with you guys today. It's always a pleasure. I'm a big fan of One Hood, this show, and the work you guys do to educate folks in our community. So it's really an honor to be here. And I think the last time I was here, I wasn't even yet a candidate for lieutenant governor. So it's good to come back as the Democratic nominee for Pennsylvania's next lieutenant governor.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And one, congratulations, because I don't know if I've seen you since the May primary, but just a very strong showing, all over the state, even in Philadelphia with, candidates from other parts of the state, winning in the areas where they were from. I think that was a very strong showing. Could you just share, one story, from the campaign trail? Because even though, a lot of people don't know, in Pennsylvania, everyone has to run separately, even early, you and Mr. Shapiro, let everyone know that you were basically running together as a team, but you still have to appear on the ballot separately, and win your own race. So, what was the biggest kind of takeaway you had from your experience the first time running statewide?
Yeah, so one, the whole experience was really humbling, and you're 100% right. The way the system is set up here in Pennsylvania, the lieutenant governor runs separately from the gubernatorial candidate, and voters have to give their stamp of approval in the primary to pair you together. I had never run for an office outside of my state legislative district, so running statewide was a big undertaking for me, and going from representing a district of about 62,000 people here in the Mon Valley to trying to represent the entire Commonwealth, which is about 13 million people, was a big lift. I had two other opponents from the southeastern part of the state, one from Montgomery County, one from Philadelphia, and that was a challenge. The majority of the Democratic primary votes come out of southeastern Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, and the collar counties. I think when we looked at the numbers, it was roughly about 70% of the Democratic primary vote came out of southeastern PA, and roughly 24% came out of southwestern Pennsylvania. So initially, just from geographics, I was at a little bit of a disadvantage, but we made history. We spent over almost $3 million running for lieutenant governor, the most money that's ever been spent running for this office in history. And we made history to become the first African-American ever nominated to serve as Pennsylvania's lieutenant governor. But it was also historic in the fact that I won every single county, all 67 counties here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and got more votes than any other Democrat running in a contested primary in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So that was extremely humbling. As I travel the Commonwealth and hear stories from different folks that I meet at different events, and one thing became clear: people want leaders who lead with empathy and compassion, and they want folks who are like them, who are regular working class folks. I've often said that the people closest to the pain should be closest to the power. And, my story represents that, being the son of a union bus driver. Literally, my dad's a Pittsburgh Regional Transit bus operator. He's driving a bus right now in the city of Pittsburgh. And my mom's a hairdresser. My parents worked really hard to ensure that my sister and I had every opportunity to succeed. And I think that resonated with folks. I think a lot of people have similar stories about trying to build a strong foundation for their families to go on to be successful.
Thank you for that. It's extremely inspiring. Can you talk just a little bit about the role of lieutenant governor? One thing we like to do is give a little civic education, when we can. And, people hear the term, lieutenant governor, but particularly in the state of Pennsylvania, there's some unique roles and responsibilities that the lieutenant governor has that they may not have in other states. I'm not an expert on every state's lieutenant governor, but I know in Pennsylvania, there's some unique roles. So could you just talk a little bit about, what makes the lieutenant governor of Pennsylvania so unique?
Yeah, so it's an interesting role. There are statutory requirements for the office, but each lieutenant governor is slightly different depending on the person in the office. The statutory requirements for the lieutenant governor's office are the LG serves as the president of the state senate. So you are the presiding officer of the Pennsylvania Senate. You're a leader in the Senate in terms of managing floor debate. You are the chairman of the Board of Pardons, which is a significant role for folks who are interested in criminal justice reform. The lieutenant governor chairs the Board of Pardons, which is responsible for making recommendations to the governor for pardons and commutations. And so that's been a big role that's been highlighted by current Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman and much of the work he's done. But the Lieutenant Governor also chairs the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Council, which a lot of folks don't necessarily realize. So you run PEMA. So when there is an emergency in Pennsylvania, whether it's with public safety, and if you think back to previous lieutenant governors, Mark Schweiker had the Q Creek Miner incident, as well as he was a lieutenant governor on 9/11 to help coordinate the response here in Pennsylvania to make sure when the plane went down in Somerset to coordinate the emergency response. So lieutenant governor is in charge of that. And then outside of those roles, the role is really shaped by the responsibilities that the governor delegates to the lieutenant governor, and oftentimes. And so we've seen different governors delegate different responsibilities to the lieutenant governor over the years. I think it's really unique the way Josh Shapiro and I have approached this. As you mentioned earlier in the opening, Josh endorsed me and was standing next to me when I announced my campaign for lieutenant governor. We said very clearly that we wanted to be a team and partners, not just in this campaign, but in governing the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And we've seen in the past, matchups between the governor and lieutenant governor who don't always get along, who don't always work well together. And that doesn't necessarily yield positive results for the people here in Pennsylvania. And we stood up and said, we want voters to know that we're going to be a team. We're going to run as a team. We're going to govern as a team. And that's what they can expect from a Shapiro-Davis administration, two people who are going to work together to deliver results for working class people here in Pennsylvania.
And as you know, being in the middle of, this political season, how much focus is on the state of Pennsylvania. For our viewers, can you just talk a little bit about, from your perspective, what do you feel is at stake, given, the candidates who will be appearing on the ballot in November? Not only you and Mr. Shapiro, but obviously, and it's been a national conversation, obviously, about, what's happening in Pennsylvania. But as someone who's actually on the campaign trail, going county to county, what's your message to voters about what's truly at stake this November?
Many of the things, every fundamental right and freedom that many folks care about, that if you care about a woman's right to choose and make her own reproductive health care decisions, that is on the line here in Pennsylvania. Josh and I are running against an opponent who says he will ban abortion without any exceptions for rape, incest, or life of the mother. If you care about making your own women making their own reproductive health care decisions, that's on the line. If you care about having access to the ballot box and electing your leaders to serve in positions, that is on the line here in Pennsylvania. The governor appoints the Secretary of State here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, who administers our election system. Our opponent, Doug Mastriano, has said he has chosen who he wants to be as his Secretary of State, but he has not revealed that to the public yet. He has also said, as governor, he will certify and decertify election machines here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania based on who wins. He has said in 2024, in our presidential election, he will not certify an election here in Pennsylvania that doesn't certify Donald Trump as the winner here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. That's taking your right to vote away, your right to pick who your leaders are away. And if you are a working class person like my family, and if you are a member of a union and you know how the union way of life benefits working class families and propels them to the middle class, that is at stake. He has said, Doug Mastriano on primary night said, the first thing he wants to do as governor is go after unions and make Pennsylvania a right to work state. So if you care about unions being in the middle class, that is on the line here in Pennsylvania. I think about my grandparents who fought in the civil rights movement, who marched, who worked to make sure that their children, their grandchildren had the right to vote and had the right to have their voices be heard, let alone I don't know that they ever thought that their grandson would one day run for the second highest office in this Commonwealth. But I think about all those people who fought for our fundamental rights and freedoms. And the Republicans love to talk about how they're the party of freedom. Well, it's not freedom when you tell women what they can and can't do with their own bodies. It's not freedom when you tell people that they get to vote, but the leaders get to pick the winners. And it's not freedom when you say folks can't organize and join a union to join the middle class and create a better life for them and their families.
And do you feel like in your travels across the 67 counties of our Commonwealth, do you feel like that powerful message you just shared is resonating? Do you feel like people across the state are starting to understand what's going on, and if not, how much more work do we have to do in these next 80, 90 days to really crystallize the uniqueness? Because everyone hears every election year, this is the most important election, this is the most important election. But it seems like the last few cycles, it hasn't really been hyperbole. It actually has been, what seems to be a pretty realistic assessment, of where our politics are at. So do you feel like, amongst the voters, people are really starting to understand what's really going on right now in Pennsylvania?
I do. I think there are two things that are happening. I think one, people are understanding the stakes, right? And people are starting to pay attention to what candidates are saying and what they're doing. And I think people are starting to see which candidates are actually putting forth plans to make their lives better. Josh Shapiro and I have rolled out a number of policy proposals to improve our schools, jumpstart Pennsylvania's economy, create more opportunity for minority and Black-owned businesses. And the other side has not put out a policy prescription for anything. They actually refuse to speak to the press and sit down for interviews. They refuse to tell voters what they're going to do if they're elected. I think it's not hyperbole to say that this election will decide whether we have future elections in many ways here in the Commonwealth and in this country. Back to that, I think folks are waking up to the fact that Doug Mastriano and the Republican Party are systematically trying to peel back their fundamental rights and their freedoms. And there's only one party that's really fighting to preserve those protections. And so I think one of the things we need to do as candidates, as leaders, is make sure folks get out to vote, right? Make sure folks understand when election day is, make sure folks understand the different options they have for voting, whether it's to vote by mail or to physically go to your polling place, to help folks make a plan to vote, to exercise their rights. We are going to be spending the next 83 days now through election day, and we're literally about a month away before people will start getting mail-in ballots and are able to cast those. We're going to be spending a lot of time in communities talking about what's at stake and why folks should exercise their votes. I've been spending a lot of time, particularly in lower income and minority communities, because As I said earlier, I think those closest to the pain should be closest to the power, because those folks who are closest to the pain are the most affected by the decisions that government makes every single day. And so as a candidate, it's my responsibility to show up in those communities. And I've continued to do that, not just in Allegheny County, but in Philadelphia and the southeast and central part of Pennsylvania, to tell folks really what's at stake, and what it means, what truly means is on the line here in this election.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I did want to mention, the fact that, you are, from McKeesport, you represent the Mon Valley. And that's a place that obviously, if you're from Western Pennsylvania, we all know, McKeesport, very well. A lot of us have family. A lot of us, have spent time out there, are very familiar, with that area. I remember being, a young kid, and actually well, now it's no longer called Port Authority, it's called PRT. But when they used to have the train that you could catch from downtown Pittsburgh out to McKeesport Transportation Center, I remember being a kid in the 80s, going out to McKeesport, for various things with my mom on the PAT train, but for folks around the state, who don't know as much about McKeesport, you talk a little bit about, where you're from and why, if you're successful in November, why it's important to have someone from McKeesport, in the state capitol, representing, the state and the unique perspective that you bring when you're thinking about folks from all over the state.
Yeah, the community that I'm from in McKeesport is a former steel mill industrial town that really the steel mills were our economy, right? They were our life, bread and butter. And when those mills collapsed in the late 70s and early 80s, it devastated our community. McKeesport as a city went from having a population of about 65,000 people to today we stand at about 17,000 people. It decimated our downtown business districts. We saw massive droves of our citizens leave and move for other opportunities. And for literally decades, it has struggled. It has struggled with all the problems that a community that's seen that type of devastation struggles with, like poverty, like gun violence, like struggling schools, right? And so oftentimes this community in many ways has been forgotten by a lot of folks in powerful places like Harrisburg and Washington. And we need an advocate, not just for a city like for McKeesport, but for the McKeesports all across this Commonwealth. There are places all across Pennsylvania, like Chester, like Steelton, that have suffered from the loss of industry, but haven't really gotten the attention that it deserves. I know a lot of folks talk about Pittsburgh and kind of the rebirth of our region and kind of the economic development that's taking place. Well, those things aren't happening or haven't traditionally happened in the Mon Valley communities. And I know, you guys talk about gentrification sometimes on some of your shows and what's happening in East Liberty. Well, the reality is, if you look at the pattern of like migration, particularly for Black and brown families in the city of Pittsburgh, who can no longer afford to live in the city of Pittsburgh, there's a clear line. They're coming to McKeesport, Duquesne, Homestead, because, while housing is affordable still, but there's not a large stock of quality housing. And so my community is one that's struggling. I think 50% of the kids live below the poverty line in the city of McKeesport. We've been fighting to bring resources in and had some success in my time as a legislator. But really, I want to be lieutenant governor because I want to fight for communities just like McKeesport all across this Commonwealth, to reinvest in places like McKeesport, to make sure we're connecting them to the economies of the future. I was really proud. One of the projects I did as a state rep was help land a medical cannabis company in McKeesport on what is a former steel mill site. When that opened, we opened it with about 200 jobs. About a year ago, we announced that they're going to be expanding to 300 jobs, and to 800 jobs. And they purchased all the they bought all the rest of the vacant property that was on our former mill site. And so that's an example of like taking an older community that's been struggling and connecting them to a new economy. And it's going to yield significant dividends for McKeesport and the Mon Valley in the years to come.
Thank you for that. And, we talked a little bit about, some of the policies. And if you go on to, you and Mr. Shapiro's website, there's a whole range of issues. But one of the ones that really stuck out for me on the website is there's a specific tab for Black economic equity.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit why it was so important to highlight that as a specific issue? And some would even say, courageous, because I would imagine there might be some, not necessarily obviously within your campaign, but on various campaigns say, maybe we may not want to put that, on the website. Why was that so important for the Shapiro Davis ticket to say one of our major issues that we're focusing on as a ticket is Black economic equity, and why do you think it's not only important for Black Pennsylvanians, but it's important for the economy of Pennsylvania as a whole?
Yeah, we've really, Josh and I have centered this campaign on lifting people up. And that means all people here in Pennsylvania. And the reality is you look, Black business has a huge potential to contribute to our economy here in Pennsylvania if we help grow it. And so if you look at like what the Commonwealth spends on Black and brown businesses, I think it's just at like 3% of our spend right now, which is quite frankly far too low, unacceptable. We should be spending much more. And then we should be helping businesses grow here in Pennsylvania. We talk about creating a Black business center to provide technical and capital support for Black businesses who are trying to grow here in the Commonwealth. And I think we have to center equity in everything that we do, right? And so that's why it was so important for us to roll out a policy platform in the Commonwealth, because we know when Black businesses succeed, our economy succeeds, and everybody will share in that prosperity here in Pennsylvania.
And I thought it was interesting, in the quick profile of that policy platform. You also talked about, affordable housing and public health. How do you also see, those issues, as another piece of this larger Black economic equity picture?
Yeah, so we have. So I mean that's an issue, particularly in many Black communities, not just in Southwest Pennsylvania, but all across the Commonwealth. Affordable housing is huge. We have there are multiple problems to the affordable housing issue. One, in some places, housing is not affordable because you just can't afford it; it's too expensive. And other places, you have housing where it may be affordable, but you have a lack of quality housing that folks can live in those communities. So Josh and I propose investing more money in the Pennsylvania Housing Trust Fund to help create more money and more capital to create more affordable housing here in Pennsylvania. As it relates to health equity, the Black maternal mortality rate here in Pennsylvania is among the highest in the country. We have to have a health department that's focused on centering that work and changing those statistics here in the Commonwealth. That's an area that I've done some work on with my colleague, Representative Morgan Stevens, has been a leader in our caucus on it in the House, and we've been laser focused on trying to address it. And I think, we want to be strong partners from the administration side to say this is an issue for us. It's unacceptable. We have some of the best healthcare providers in the country located here in Pennsylvania, and we need to address this issue head on.
Thank you for that. I was just thinking about everything that's going on in this campaign, and this campaign is so interesting. I know very recently, it's come into question, of whether there's going to be a debate calendar, for these very important offices. And I understand your opponent says something out with some very, very strict guidelines, around those debates. Can you talk, a little bit about that and how that's kind of unusual from how, the normal process in which televised debates and a debate schedule for a fall campaign for such important offices?
Yeah. So Doug Mastriano basically put out a stunt saying that, he will only debate if the campaigns pick the moderator. His campaign gets to pick their moderator and the venue. And, we have a long tradition here of Pennsylvania of reputable news outlets and broadcasters like PCN, like KDKA, WTE, of hosting debates with multiple moderators to ask questions of each candidate. Josh has committed to participating, I believe, in that traditional type of setting. What we're not going to do is engage in political gimmicks. We think voters in Pennsylvania should hear directly from us as candidates, and we should be able to answer tough questions. Unfortunately, Senator Mastriano has refused to answer any questions. He does not speak to the media. He does not invite them into his events. He goes so far as to kick them out of his events. And so if he's ready to get serious, I think, we're ready to have that conversation, but we're not going to do it. We're not going to do it outside of the traditional process that's been done for election cycles for years.
Right. No, thank you for clearing that up. That it had, been in the news. And in our last few minutes, together, one of the things I did want to mention was, right now I'm actually headed down there right after we finish up to Netroots. Netroots is in town for the weekend. Netroots Nation, for those who aren't familiar, it's a national conference of progressives that's been going on, since the early 2000s. Actually, I was at the first one. I believe it was in Las Vegas, but it's been all over. It's been to Pittsburgh now twice, and we're really excited. So do you have any plans? Are you going to be participating in any events and plan to be out and about this weekend?
Yes, I am. I'm one of the keynote speakers on Saturday. I think one of the closing keynote speakers for Netroots. I do plan to be at the opening. I think there's an opening reception tonight, and there's a few other things on my calendar. It's wonderful that they're back here in Pittsburgh. We're happy to have them here. I think Pittsburgh's a very it's an interesting case. I mean, I think if Khari, you and I have known each other for a decade. If we went back a decade ago and I told you the mayor's going to be black, potentially the next congressional representative from Pittsburgh is going to be a black woman, and potentially the first black lieutenant governor is going to come out of the Pittsburgh region, we would have probably been like, yeah, you're crazy, right? And so I think it's great that they're here to highlight the work that's going on in Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania, particularly all those grassroots activists who support candidates like me up and down the ballot. But I'm going to be there. I'm excited to have them here. And I'm going to, for folks who might be there, you can expect to see me Saturday afternoon as one of the speakers at Netroots.
Awesome. Yeah, no, we're really excited that Netroots is in town. I'll be participating, as well in Thursday's plenary activity. So I'm going to be heading down over to the convention center. So we're really excited for that. So so before we adjourn, is there anything else you want to share, about this moment we're in as politics, or say on behalf of the Shapiro Davis ticket, and anything that we should know? And also, how do we get in touch with the campaign? If someone wants to volunteer, someone wants to get more information about the Shapiro Davis ticket.
Yeah, I would say first, thank you for having me on. And look, it's not lost on me that I'll be potentially Pennsylvania's first black lieutenant governor, and with that comes a significant responsibility to speak out for marginalized people all across this Commonwealth. That's something that I hold very personally. And it's also my responsibility to make sure that I'm not the last person to serve in an office like that here in Pennsylvania. But I just want to thank you for having me. I think if folks want to get involved, they should go to joshshapiro.org. There's a volunteer section. There's a number of ways you can get involved, from knocking on doors, making phone calls, to text banking. I'd encourage folks to get off the sidelines, get in the game with us. This election is so important, particularly for marginalized folks, to get out and let their voices be heard, and to vote for the government and that you want, because literally this is going to decide not just the future of Pennsylvania for the next 4 years, but it's going to decide our future for the next 25 years.
And can you share that website one more time?
Yeah, it's www.joshshapiro.org. And then if you're looking for more information about me, it's just www.shapirodavis.org.
All right, thank you so much. And that was our Sunday night sit down with State Representative Austin Davis, the Democratic nominee for Pennsylvania's lieutenant governor. Thank you so much for joining us. Looking forward to seeing you down at the convention center at some point this weekend. Just thank you for all your work. Super proud of you. Best of luck on the rest of the trail. I'm sure we'll be in touch to have another conversation between now and November 8th. But I know you have a lot of ground to cover, so we can't be the only people you talk to. People enjoy to have you on all the time. We gotta spread the love, of course.
No, we'd love to be back, and I would love to come back as Pennsylvania's lieutenant governor elect right after November 8th. So
absolutely,
let's get it done. And I'd love to come back in that new role.
Absolutely, no, yeah, we'll definitely be in touch once that happens. But best of luck, and again, Austin Davis, state representative and Democratic nominee for lieutenant governor, on tonight's Sunday Night Sit Down. Thank you so much for joining us. Best of luck, and we'll see you on the trail soon.
All right, thanks for having me.
I want to thank State Representative Austin Davis once again for joining us for the Sunday Night Sit Down. Best of luck on the campaign trail. We are going to continue these conversations with various candidates and elected leaders and other newsmakers every Sunday from now into the election. And don't forget to join us on Monday nights for the Monday Night Power Hour at 7 p.m. We are going to start our candidate forum series in late September. So stay tuned for that as well. But until then, stay tuned, stay engaged, stay encouraged, and stay involved in the process. I want to thank you so much. On behalf of my colleague who couldn't join us today, Miracle Jones, this is Khari Mosley from the Woodhood family. And once again, thank you to Austin Davis for joining us. This has been the Sunday Night Sit Down. This is Khari Mosley signing out. Thank you. Have a wonderful Sunday evening.
Welcome to the Whitest House. Slave souls haunt the halls when the light is out. Except the blood of the poor and the wicked mouth. The last gasp of a world that is dying out. Welcome to the Whitest House, where every room is a tomb that they lie about. Where you can put your filthy feet on the finest couch, and for the right amount, you can even buy it out.
That's the essence of your entire political identity. You might be a white supremacist.